Hi everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about one specific hammering technique, and I'm going to share with you some tips that will enable you to develop a more efficient, less tiring and safer technique, and at the end also a more pleasurable one. All things that combined will help you become a better stone carver. So if you're interested, let's get right into it. So the technique that I'm going to discuss today specifically refers to the stone carving club hammer. And if you have watched my videos on hammers, you should know that the stone carving club hammer is slightly different than the regular club hammer, and that is because its head is slightly curved, and we will see in a minute why that is. So the stone carving club hammer in combination with the point chisel. But we will not look at the point chisel today, we will mainly look on how to swing the hammer. But there are a few theoretical aspects that you need to know in order to understand what exactly happens during the swinging process, so that you can start sculpting in a smart way rather than just a strong way. So the first thing that is important and that we need to look at is how to hold the hammer. So hammers have a handle, and they would need to be held as low as possible, and also don't stiffen up. Hold it loosely, okay? Don't hold it too tight. You need to be relaxed. I see some people holding hammers here at the center and then carving like this. Some people even higher up. Now that's fine if you want to be delicate, but if you want to really generate some force and have a strong impact on the stone, you need to hold the hammers way down. So that way you'll be able to leverage the force that you can create with that handle and also generate a lot of acceleration, which eventually will result into force. So hold your hammer in a fist. Also don't hold it like this with your thumb up. That will eventually strain your ligaments here. So hold it in a fist, and this will also allow you to do this movement while swinging the hammer and also gain more acceleration. So now that we've looked at the grip, let's look at the actual movement of the swinging of the hammer. And one thing that you should know is that we should try to use the laws of physics to our advantage in helping us having a more efficient swing. But in order to understand this, we need to break down the movements involved in swinging the hammer. So let's look at it one by one. As you obviously know, in order to remove some material from a block of stone, you need to strike the chisel as strong as possible. So let's see how we can generate the most strength with the less effort possible. I've seen some people carving like this from here and striking the chisel like this. So the problem with this, of course, first of all, you should hold the hammer low down, and also is that the distance between the hammer and the chisel is not enough to generate that force. Because you see, force is generated by the mass multiplied by the acceleration, by the speed. So if the distance is not big enough, you won't be able to generate the speed. So in order to do that, you would need to strike the hammer from quite a distance. Of course, don't exaggerate. I'm not saying that you should strike it from here, but just from here would be a good distance. And I'll tell you in a minute why exactly from here. So this distance is key to generate the speed. And of course, you need to generate speed. So it makes no sense if you're going slow, you need to go very fast. And in order to go fast, there is here this misconception that you need to use your muscles. But on the contrary, you should not use your muscles. You should be as relaxed as possible. And basically what you should do is kind of throwing the hammer. Keep holding it, of course, but you're throwing the hammer against the chisel. And in this way, you'll be able to generate as much speed as possible. Don't stiffen your muscles, just relax and have a very smooth and fluid swinging movement. For example, look at athletes who throw discs, or baseball players, for example. The moment when they throw that ball, they're very relaxed. Their arm is not stiff. Actually, it's very bendy if you see slow motion images. So very relaxed. And this is what we should do with the hammer as well. Very relaxed and generate that speed, but please don't stiffen up. You'll actually do the opposite by stiffening your muscles. You'll be slowing down that acceleration. And here comes the second important aspect, because if you are relaxed, if your swing is smooth and soft, what happens when the hammer strikes the chisel is that it will bounce back by itself. And by bouncing back, you will save energy. Because what many people do is that they strike and they finish their movement here. Or some people even go beyond the chisel. Try to see what you're doing, observe your movement. Some people strike and just go beyond the chisel. And what happens then is that they need to use their muscles then to lift up the hammer again up here. Now, if you do that a couple of times, it's not a problem. But if you need to do this 2-3 hours a day or more, well, after a couple of minutes, you'll be exhausted. So by having a relaxed movement, the hammer will by itself bounce back. And look, effortlessly, I'm back in my first position. So I didn't need to use my muscles to lift up the hammer again all the way up here. It's just bouncing back. So now we already have saved a little bit of energy by not using our muscles there. Let's look at another way to do this as well. As you can see, I'm resting my hammer here on my shoulder. And this is the beginning. This is my 0 position, as I would say. So the weight of the hammer, of course, tends to go down because of gravity. And by holding it up here, you don't need to necessarily rest it on your shoulder, but I'm doing this just to demonstrate. The weight is going down, but it's resting on my shoulder, and my elbow is carrying all that weight all the way down, but it's not really carrying it because it's resting on it, right? It's easier to carry something like this than carrying it like this. So this is why it's important to begin your movement here, because at this stage you'll have a millisecond of rest. I see some people carving like this all the time. Now, the problem with this is that beside the fact that they need to generate a side weight force, they are also using their muscles to keep the hammer here not from falling down. Swinging like this, you're also working against gravity. You understand that? So this is why it's good to swing like this, following the gravity and resting up here, using the bouncing back. And you see that the movement is very round, and this is why now we understand that the striking head of the carving hammer is round, in order to facilitate even more that movement, right? It's very precise. The hammerhead is shaped according to that movement. Now, the third aspect is to find one fixed movement that we can repeat over and over effortlessly. Because again, we're carving for hours a day, and as you probably already have experienced, you might hit your hands with your hammer. It's very frustrating, it's very painful. You might cut your hands, and this is because the movement has not been studied very well. I'm always surprised that we never focus on our movement, on our technique, but only on the sculpture. Well, at the end, this is the goal, but of course we need to study a technique. This is our craft, this is our profession. And just as athletes break down every movement that they do for their work, just as a baseball player, again, studies how to throw the ball in the best possible way, or a disc thrower, their kind of athlete, they study their movement. We need to study our movement. We need to break it down and understand what's happening. So even here, I would suggest to try to develop one fixed movement that we repeat all the time, and that reduces the risk of hitting our hands and injuring ourselves. So to my experience, the best way to do this is to hold your elbow against your body at all times, at least in the beginning stages when you're developing this technique. So basically, you should practice maybe even holding an orange or an apple between your elbow and your body and not letting it fall while doing this movement. So in this way, you'll always do exactly the same movement. You have a point where to pivot on, and nothing else can go wrong. You'll always repeat the same exact movement because the length of your arm and the length of the hammer are fixed. So if you fix also the point where the whole movement begins, Well, you'll have always that same movement. It's like a metronome that goes back and forth all the time like this. It's centered all around one pivot point, or like the indicator of a clock. They're able to turn perfectly round because they're fixed at the center. Same thing here, we fix the elbow against our body, and that's the movement that we do, at least in the beginning. Of course, later there will be some other movements, but to begin with, this is the basic principle. And if you need to carve and move around your sculpture, when I do that, for example, is that I always keep that exact position. If I need to carve like this, I just move my whole body. So if I don't do this, I just move my whole body like this, maintaining that axis here so that I can still swing precisely and securely. And of course, if you have a sculpture like this, you can move around maintaining that position. So no need to do things like this. If you need to carve here, just move on this side and then you can carve like this. Now, applying this technique will develop a muscle memory. In the beginning, it will be hard. You will inevitably hit your hands. You will injure yourself, but you have to train your body to remember that movement. It's a haptic knowledge that you need to repeat as much as possible. And after a while, you will see that the whole thing will go without any problem. And also practice slowly. So again, don't focus only on a sculpture. Maybe if you're carving a couple of hours a day, maybe 10 minutes a day, focus on the movement. Forget the sculpture for a minute and just focus, train yourself, and do it slowly, okay? Do it slowly so that you can check everything. And what I mean slowly, I don't mean the striking movement. That's the only thing that needs to be fast. But what I mean is that you need to check what you're doing. So as I said before, this is my starting point, my zero position, but it's also my ending point. So I place myself like this, and my goal is to end up like this after the movement immediately. So I strike and I go back. That's it. And then you check everything, as we said before. The hammer is now resting on the shoulder, the elbow is going down, it's against my body, this arm is relaxed, I'm standing straight, I'm relaxed, shoulders are relaxed, okay? Strike and come back. Okay? Strike and come back. So as you can see, the striking movement is very fast, but then take a break and check everything. Make the checklist, okay? Shoulders, elbow, arm, back, and strike, and come back. Also make sure, again, not to go beyond the chisel. And back. And back. And check. And in this way, you will develop a movement that will go by itself. Because actually, when you're carving, you're not watching your arm or the top of the chisel, you're watching the point of the chisel, you're looking at your sculpture, so you need to focus your attention on the sculpture. So a reason more to develop a more secure striking technique. So you see, after a while, I don't even need to look at the chisel anymore. Just going by itself. Because I trained my body to remember that exact movement. So it's always striking on the chisel. And use that bouncing force to get back, okay? So as fast as possible, back and forth. And come back to the zero movement, relax, and go again. So to recapitulate, hold the hammer high up, not here or here, hold it here. Stand in front of the sculpture, hammer on your shoulder, this is your beginning point, elbow down, against the body, chisel here, fast movements back and forth. Bounce back, don't use your muscles. Okay, so this was it. I hope that the information was useful. Go practice, let me know how it goes, and if you have any questions, any comments, leave them here below. I'll be happy to check them out. If you want to know more about me and my side projects, follow me on my Instagram page. And as always, I'm Adar Jaber, and I'll see you next time.